In this video, I'm going to demonstrate just how ridiculous the new rules the ATF are proposing regarding stabilizing braces on firearms really are. Rule 2021R-08 is supposed to be implemented in December. And at the end of the day, what it tries to do is basically identify stabilizing braces as possibly being rifle stocks, and then therefore turning your AR pistols or any other braced firearm you have into a possible SBR, which would then be in violation of the NFA, which turns millions of Americans into criminals overnight, which is why you should definitely be concerned about this. Now, in conjunction with that rule, you have ATF Worksheet 4999, which gives you a point-based system as to how you can score your AR pistol or other braced firearms as to whether or not they are going to qualify as a rifle or as a braced handgun. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to actually go through these two different braced firearms you see right here, and I'm going to go through the worksheet to show you how they score. I'm also going to give you immediate tips and suggestions out of how you can disqualify your firearms from this process right away so you don't have to waste any time, because many firearms will be basically automatically disqualified right off the bat. So I'm just giving you that heads up now. And at the same time, the MCX you see right here can actually be reconfigured in a way that would technically qualify it as a braced handgun at the end of this worksheet, but I'll show you how ridiculous that process is, I'll show you how sacrificial it is, and how it hurts the overall functionality of the firearm. So I'm not trying to preach compliance, I'm not trying to tell anybody that this is what they should do. I'm trying to show you why this is ridiculous, and I'm trying to show you that at the end of this worksheet, I don't think a lot of people are going to follow this. I know a lot of people aren't even going to be aware of it. And at the same time, I think a lot of people are probably going to say, screw it, and do whatever it is they're going to do, which is why a lot of this is becoming more and more ridiculous. And understand that millions of AR pistols and millions of braced firearms have been sold over the last few years legally and legally acquired by people like myself. And now I'm suddenly being told that it's no longer able to be used in the configuration that it was purchased as. And that is not how things are supposed to work now, is it? So because of the wide use case scenario that these are having throughout the country, I believe they should be constitutionally protected and none of this should matter anyway. And the whole short-barreled rifle SBR requirements through the NFA should no longer exist. But that's just me. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about why this whole pistol brace thing is going to be a real problem, and I'll show you how ridiculous it is. Okay, so here's one of my AR pistols. This is a Wilson Combat 11.3-inch upper on an Aero Precision lower. Now you'll notice I removed the suppressor. And why? Because basically this worksheet won't really allow for a lot of additional weight, and the suppressor tips the scale to the point where it doesn't really work on either one of the braced firearms we're going to talk about today. So I removed it because at the end of the day, this is a very weight-conscious situation, which you'll find out here in a minute. And with the suppressor, it basically just wouldn't work. So I removed that, and we also have to talk about some other things, including overall length, in order to see if we qualify. Right here, I've got an SB Tactical SBA3 pistol brace. This is one of the more popular pistol brace designs out there. And I did remove it so that we could start talking about the immediate disqualifiers that would take your braced weapon right out of the equation when it comes to being able to use a pistol brace or not. So we have our ATF Worksheet 4999. And real quick, just so you guys know, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not saying that I know exactly how all of this works. There's a lot of gray area in here, but I figured we would go through this together and do this together to give you guys some ideas about my approach and how I understood the information. Maybe you guys can critique some of it in the comments to let me know if I'm doing anything wrong, and just to give you some ideas about how ridiculous this whole situation is. This is not about compliance or anything like that. This is to demonstrate why this is dumb and we shouldn't have to even consider it. Now, big time disqualifiers, so you don't go through this whole list wasting your time. Right here in section 1, it's the suitability of brace use. Okay, these are prerequisites before you can even consider the use of a brace at all. The first one is that the weapon must weigh at least 64 ounces or 4 pounds. So most of your AR pistols and AK pistols and things like that are going to weigh 4 pounds or more, but maybe you have some kind of like a micro Roni chassis or something like that, and somehow it weighs a little less than 4 pounds. Just keep in mind that the overall weight has to be at least 4 pounds. And that does include like any attachments or anything that's attached to it. So just keep that all in mind. And then the big one here that's going to disqualify a lot of people right off the bat is the weapon must have an overall length between 12 and 26 inches. Okay? Now, why does that matter? Well, I'll show you here in just one second. In order to get overall length, you measure from the back of the buffer tube to the front of the barrel. Not the front of the muzzle device, but the front of the barrel. Okay, so we'll go ahead and measure that real quick. And then it's about 27¼ inches, okay? Now, technically that would now disqualify this from being able to use a pistol brace at all, except for the fact that I do have a folding stock adapter, which you'll see makes sense here in a minute as we go to another section of the worksheet. But this is something I want everyone to keep in mind, and this might be a disqualifier for you right off the bat. This is an 11.3 inch upper, okay? Now, if we measure this folding stock adapter, it's about 1 3/4 of an inch, right? Maybe even a little less, like 1.5. But either way, let's just give it the benefit of the doubt and say it's 1 3/4 of an inch. That basically should tell you that if you have a 12.5 inch AR pistol or longer, maybe a 13.7 or a 14.5, it's going to probably not qualify to use a brace at all. So if you're not going to go pin and weld a muzzle device or anything like that in order to reach a full 16-inch barrel length, you're not going to be able to use a brace, and you're going to have to register it as an SBR, or else you won't be able to have any type of brace situation going on back here at all. So just keep that in mind, because that's going to immediately disqualify a lot of people. So if it's over 26 inches in overall length, you're done, okay? And don't forget, just because it's over 26 inches, if the barrel is still shorter than 16 inches, no matter what the overall length is, you still have an SBR if you have a stock on it, all right? So just learn all those rules and make sure you do your research before you start thinking, oh, I can just do this now instead. I don't think that's how it's going to work. Just keep that in mind, okay? So overall, if you have a barrel that's longer than 12.5 inches on an AR pistol, you might want to double check that overall length before you even get started. Because like I said, if it's over that 26 inches or shorter than 12 inches, you can't use it no matter what, okay? Now, moving on from there, another immediate disqualifier, and this is why this comes into play, is going to be inclusion of a folding adapter extended length of pull, okay? And a 12.5 but under 13.5 inch length of pull. Now, why does that matter? Well, first off, according to my research, so correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but if you have a folding stock, okay, or a folding brace, this is how you now measure the overall length of the firearm. And the reason for that is because one of the big reasons the SBRs are in the NFA is because they're concealable, or they have the ability to be more easily concealed, right? Or at least that's the reasoning behind it. So technically, this overall length would now be about 19 3/4 of an inch, okay? So as you can see, it still fits within those parameters, versus when the stock was unfolded, it did not. So technically, it meets the prerequisites for moving forward as suitability of a brace would say. Just so you're aware, I don't know 100% some of this stuff just because I'm not a lawyer, like I said, but this is my understanding of what the ATF says about overall length rules when measuring for pistols or SBRs or anything of that nature, okay? Now, that's why this matters, because this moved forward in the sense of prerequisites, but now I'll show you why it's immediately disqualified. Okay, if you accumulate more than 4 points on this worksheet, you have a rifle. 4 points or more, actually, okay? If you have under, it can be a braced handgun. So this gun technically qualified for suitability of a brace, but now I'll show you why it's immediately disqualified so you don't waste any unnecessary time, okay? It has an inclusion of a folding adapter extending length of pull, which it does extend the length of pull because of this 1 3/4 of an inch space that's put in right here. And your length of pull is 12.5 inches, but under 13.5 inches. That then gives you 3 points. The extended adapter length of pull gives you 2 points. Suddenly you're already at 5 points, which would then say that this is a rifle and not a braced handgun. Understand that at 11.5 and 12.5, it's still 2 points. So even if this was a little bit shorter than this barrier right here, well, honestly, it's still 2 plus 2 with the folding adapter, which means 4 points, and it's still disqualified. So that's immediately disqualifying. Now, to measure the length of pull, according to the ATF, you measure from the center of the trigger to the center of the shoulder device, okay? And yes, this is safe and cleared, but I'll just go ahead and show everybody in case anyone wants to freak out about it. But it's empty, okay, and the safety's on. Don't freak out. Thank you. All right. Now, we're going to measure from the center of the trigger, and we have to put the pistol brace back on because it goes to the center of the accessory or the brace device or whatever they're trying to call it in order to make it seem like something it might not be. That's just my opinion anyway, but hey, what do you know? Okay, so it's on there, and in order to measure it properly, it has to be at the fully extended position, which it is right now. So let's go ahead and measure it from the center of the trigger and to the center of the pistol stabilizing brace. We're right at just about 13.5, maybe right under. But either way, like I said, if it's at 13.5, you're going to be at 4 points already, even without the folding stock. But at under 13.5, it's 2 points, or no, 3 points, and then the folding stock adds 2 more points. So either one, you now have a disqualifier. So in order to get this overall length to be acceptable, I had the folding stock, which allowed for that. But then the folding stock is also the reason why this is now disqualified, because it added that extra length of pull and it adds 2 more points onto the total of the equation. So check those things first, because if you have that going on, you're disqualified already. No point in going through all this other stuff. Those are the big ones you're going to want to check. And then lastly, there's a couple more here at the very end. One of them is the presence of a sight or scope with eye relief incompatible with one-handed fire. 4 points right off the bat. So if you have an LPVO or something along those lines on your AR pistol or AK pistol, you're immediately going to accumulate 4 points, and now you have a rifle instead of a braced handgun. So understand that that's going to immediately disqualify you. And there is a different point score here for a flip to the side magnifier, actually. So that's kind of interesting, but anything other than a flip to the side magnifier that adds magnification to your AR pistol is going to immediately disqualify it. Okay, 4 points right off the bat. So this 3x prism scope right here is a no-go. All right, so that's another easy one that you can just be like, well, I guess that's it then. And then down here, weapon as configured weighing more than 120 ounces. 4 points right off the bat. And this says weighed with magazine unloaded. Now, it doesn't say which magazine, because, you know, a 10-round magazine weighs less than a 30-round magazine, right? But either way, 120 ounces is just 7.5 pounds. Now, some setups are going to be 7.5 pounds or less, and that's great, but not all of them. And I can tell you right now that this suppressor did not like the idea of 7.5 pounds when included in the entire package. And it's saying right here that's weighed with everything that's on the gun, accessories and everything included. It's not asking you to get the weight of everything stripped down first. It says weapon as configured, okay? So keep that in mind, because I'm going to show you right now exactly what that weighs. So here's a 10-round magazine. This is a 300 blackout mag, but don't worry, it's not loaded, so we're good to go. But I'm going to throw that in here because it's going to give me the best chance of meeting that weight requirement. I'm going to go ahead and pull the scale up right here. Okay. Go ahead and fold the brace over. And just so you guys know, oh, got to drop that bolt. There we go. And just so you guys know, this is without even the rifle sling, okay? There we go. Trying to see if I can get that to work. There we are. Flip it around. Okay, so right now this pistol weighs 7.21 ounces. All right, so technically it's within spec. Now, everything else about it is disqualified though. So this is all the things you have to check out first. What's your weight? What's the overall length? And do you have an adapter that allows you to bypass the overall length that then screws you over for length of pull, including the adapter? And at the same time, do you have a magnified optic? Because if you do, any of those things immediately disqualifies you. Now, this gun is clearly disqualified even though it meets the weight restrictions because of all those other things. Let's get into the MCX and talk about it's being disqualified as well, but then I'll show you a configuration I put together for it that would technically qualify and just how ridiculous this whole thing is. Okay, so here's the SIG MCX. We're going to go ahead and do the entire sheet with this firearm so you can see why it's disqualified. And then I'll show you the reconfigured version of the MCX that would technically qualify and just how ridiculous and sacrificial that is when it comes to actual usability and trying to meet this criteria, because it's ridiculous. But this is not about compliance. Like I said, this is literally just to demonstrate how stupid all of this is and why we shouldn't have to deal with it at all. First and foremost, prerequisites, as a real person would say it. The weapon must be at least 64 ounces. This is definitely more than 4 pounds. And the weapon has an overall length between 12 and 26 inches. So we have the MCX here. Yes, it's safe, unloaded. We're good to go there, okay? We're gonna fold it, like I showed you before with the AR pistol. And then the overall length is about 18.25 inches, okay? But either way, it's definitely between 12 and 26 inches. So this qualifies or has suitability for brace use. Now, let's get into the rest of the ridiculousness so you can kind of see how this is going. All right, so accessory design. An accessory generally means brace, is what they're talking about here, okay? Not based on a known shoulder stock design. Incorporates shoulder stock design features. based on a known shoulder stock design. Now, you can interpret that in many different ways. That's why there's so much gray area here. But I will say that they have skeletonized stocks that look similar to what we have going on here for sale specifically for this firearm. So in order to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt and not find ourselves in any legal complications, we're going to be as brutally honest about this situation as we can be. So right here you have based on a known shoulder stock design, 2 points. Now don't forget, if you get up to 4 points or more, you suddenly have a rifle instead of a braced handgun. So we're already halfway there, which is very concerning, right? Now, rear surface area. Device incorporates features to prevent use as a shouldering device. Minimized rear surface lacking features to discourage shouldering. Rear surface useful for shouldering the firearm. Material added to increase rear surface for shouldering, okay? So this brace in particular, which I'll show you here once again, you could say most likely that this has a rear surface that is useful for shouldering the firearm because it's flat and it has some surface area. Now this is a terrible brace for that. To be in all honesty, this one spins, it's kind of loose, it's kind of flexible, so I don't think it's very good for that at all, but yet based on this worksheet, they're saying that this thing is gonna score 3 points, or no wait, 2 points, okay? So, let's go ahead and show you. We're at 2 points, and right now we're already at 4 points. So this is already disqualified. This is now considered a rifle and not a braced handgun according to this worksheet. Like I said, this isn't a rule yet, so I'm not breaking any laws or anything here. This is supposed to happen in December next month, so here we are, right? But let's just keep going so you can get some more ideas about this, all right? Adjustability, a non-adjustable fixed design or adjustable or telescoping attachment design for shouldering, okay? Well, this is non-adjustable. It's just one fixed piece, so on that we'll get a score of 0, okay? Stabilizing support, and this adjustable thing is a big deal because most people are running like an SBA3 or something like that, and those are adjustable, and that's going to give you 2 points right then and there. So that's they're clearly targeting SB Tactical's products in many ways when it comes to this because of how many of them qualify for these points right here. Okay, just keep that in mind. Now, stabilizing support. Counterbalance design non-folding, counterbalance design that folds, creating rear contact surface, right? Fin type design with arm strap, fin type design without arm strap, cuff type design that fully wraps around the arm, cuff type design that partially wraps around the arm, cuff type design that fails to wrap around the arm, and split stock configuration not designed to wrap around the shooter's arm. Now, after reading the definition of a split stock design according to the ATF, that's basically what this is. It has a strap that can wrap around the arm, but this is just splits in half and then the strap wraps around your arm. And just to my understanding, like I said, I'm not some kind of scholar on this stuff, this would qualify the 6-hour PCB brace. If you have one of those, maybe you have a copperhead or something like that. This now qualifies as a split stock configuration not designed to wrap around the shooter's arm, at least in my opinion. You could say maybe it's designed to wrap because of the strap, and that's all interpretation. Like I said, this is a lot of gray area, but to give ourselves the hardest score possible based on just questionable answers, we're going to have to say that it's got the split stock design, which is now 3 points. And I wouldn't be surprised if this definition was literally sent here in order to target this particular PCB style brace, because there's not many others like this out there. SB Tactical has a similar brace that has a similar configuration, but you know, most of them are more like the SBA3 and stuff. So you understand why this is such a big deal. They're targeting specific devices, at least in my opinion here. So just on this section 2, we scored a 7. We're already way out of bounds at this point, right? Okay. Now, let's move on to the next section, or section 3, to see if we actually have any additional configuration of weapon point scores here, okay? Length of pull, we already talked about that, right? So let's talk about the length of pull once again. I showed you the gun's safe, it's unloaded, all that stuff. We don't have to keep doing that, right? Length of pull from the middle of the trigger to the middle of the stabilizing brace, okay? Middle of the trigger. Middle of the stabilizing brace is maybe just a touch over 12 inches, okay? So, in order to score that properly, it says 11.5, but under 12.5 is 2 points, okay? So there we go. We already have 2 points right there, as you can see, okay? Attachment method. Standard AR-type pistol buffer tube. AR-type pistol buffer tube with adjustment notches. Adjustable rifle buffer tube. adjustable PDW type guide rails, extended AR type pistol buffer tube, inclusion of folding adapter extending length of pull, use of spacers to extend length of pull, modified shoulder stock with rear replaced by stability brace, and attachment method creates an unusable aim point slant. Now, there's a couple ways you can look at this. One is that this doesn't actually necessarily fit any of those, so I might not have any score to worry about here. But the only one that might fit is, of course, one of the worst ones. Modified shoulder stock with rear replaced by a stabilizing brace. You could technically maybe put this in that category just because this is a stabilizing brace on the rear of this folding stock that could be maybe thought of as being a modified stock. I don't know for sure. Like I said, there's a lot of gray area here. But to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, we're going to say that that's the right one, and that's 3 points right there, okay? So this is awful, right? We're already doing really bad. Okay. Stabilizing brace modifications and configuration. Cut or cuff type or fin type design with strap too short to function. Cuff type or fin type design with strap made out of elastic material. Well, I can tell you on an SBA3 Tactical, the strap that it comes with has elastic material, and that's already going to give you 2 more points right there, okay? Fin type lacking with an arm strap, okay? So maybe your mag pulls, like the BSL and stuff like that, they don't have an arm strap at all, but they're a fin type, that's going to give you 2 more points. Cuff type design with strap removed. So if you have a cuff type brace but no strap on it, suddenly you're at 4 points already, and boom, you're not a braced handgun anymore. Brace accessory modified for shouldering, okay? And modified shoulder stock. That's a shoulder stock that's supposed to become a brace. Those all give you 4 points and automatically disqualify you. But this particular one doesn't really qualify for any of these. So we're good there, luckily. But, I mean, we're already way out of bounds. But, oh well. Then let's move on to the last part here. Peripheral accessories, okay? Presence of a hand stop, right? 2 points. Great, because before they were only worried about vertical foregrips. You used to be able to run, your angled foregrips and your hand stops, and it doesn't count as a vertical, which you would need to make this into an SBR in order to do that. So, okay, great, but now they care about hand stops too. All right, presence of a secondary grip. Okay, like I said, like a VFG or even an AFG at this point. Now that's 4 points. And I don't know if an AFG would count for that, an angled foregrip, but it just says presence of a secondary grip, and it specifically names hand stop here. An angled foregrip has the word grip in it. So I wouldn't be surprised if that suddenly gives you 4 disqualifying points right there. Just keep that in mind, okay? Presence of a rifle type backup or flip up sights or no sights. So if you have backup sights, which this gun actually doesn't right now, that's going to give you an extra point. If you have no sights, you get a point. How ridiculous, right? But you can have like a red dot, and that disqualifies this section now because I have a sight and I don't have backup sights, so therefore we're still good. I don't understand it, but here we are. That's what they're trying to do to us, right? Presence of reflex sight with a flip to side magnifier with limited eye relief. 2 points. I do have that. So this setup is an Aimpoint Comp M5 with the Aimpoint 3XC flip to side magnifier. So I had to go ahead and mark that down as 2 more points. Let's see, presence of sight scope with eye relief and compatible with one-handed fire. We talked about that earlier. Don't have a scope on here necessarily, but I do have the magnifier. And then presence of a bipod or monopod will give you 2 more points. And then weapon as configured is weighing more than 120 ounces. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Because I got stuff on here. I got a sling, I got a magnifier, I got a red dot, we got a surefire on the front, a hand stop. We got a lot of stuff, okay? Go ahead and weigh this. Oh, sorry. Always hitting the camera. Make sure nothing's hanging off or anything crazy, right? Okay, so we're at 7.85 ounces. So I'm right on the cusp. I could probably shave 0.05 ounces off if I needed to, because 7.8 is the maximum. So there's ways to do that, of course, but I'm already so disqualified that it doesn't matter. And technically, this is also out of spec because it would have to be 7 pounds, 8 ounces exactly or less, okay? It says weighing more than 120 ounces. So because of that, I have to mark a 4 there. So what was my score? Well, in the first section, my score was a 7, okay? So we have a 7, which obviously is more than 4. So this is a rifle, not a braced handgun, according to this worksheet. It's not an admission of guilt, ATF. Get over your crap and don't shoot my dog. And then I've got, on this side of the worksheet, 2, 3, 2, 2, 4, total score of 13, right? That's a lot. 13. Okay, that's more than 4. All right, so you can see how ridiculous this is because I'm not doing anything wrong and I didn't do anything illegal and I bought this gun as a pistol with a brace on it. So why am I being punished or penalized for doing so in a legal fashion? Now, let me show you how I could change this to actually fit these parameters and maintain its ability to have a brace, and also show you how stupid that is and why it's very frustrating. But the one thing you have to keep in mind is that if you SBR something like this, it changes what you can or can't do with it in many ways. It makes it so you can't just sell it if you need to. You can't just travel across state lines without notifying the ATF. There's a whole lot of different things that occur once you SBR something like this. So there's a reason why some people might want to maintain their ability to have a pistol while also still having a brace for obvious reasons. So let's do that now, and I'll show you the process because why not? We're already here for long enough. Might as well just do the whole thing together. Okay, just so you guys know, I didn't use the magazine when I weighed this because it was already over the 7.8 ounce mark, or the 7 pound and 8 ounce mark that it needs to be under. So with the magazine, it would have just been worse. But you are supposed to weigh it with the unloaded magazine in. So just keep that in mind. But what we're gonna do here is we're gonna talk about the things that disqualified it and then see what we can do to remedy that, okay? Now, a big thing that disqualified it was this, okay? Because you had a based on a known shoulder stock design, giving it 2 points, and rear surface useful for shouldering the firearm, giving it 2 points. So how do I fix that? Well, I'll show you. Because I bought this MCX used, and it was a legacy model. Well, what's a legacy MCX? Well, it's one of their first early generation MCXs that had their first early generation pistol braces on them. And what those pistol braces were called is the XBX-15. The XBX-15 is this massive Goodyear tire on the end of a stick that Sig Sauer started selling back in the day when pistol braces first became all the rage. So this thing is huge and weighs a lot, but it checks a lot of the boxes that the other one didn't, in the sense of being, within compliance for using it as a brace on a braced handgun, right? So let's just put this on. We'll get this party started the right way. Okay. Oh my gosh, and it's slightly embarrassing just because of how ridiculous this thing is. But I think we can get through it together, and it's not a big deal. So don't worry, I'm not going to overly worry about the installation process here, because let's be honest, it's just me hanging out with you all trying to show you this ridiculous process, and then also keep talking in order to fill empty space while I stumble trying to just turn a screw the right way. But hey, that's just how YouTube works, right? Now, we got this brace on there. Look at this guy. Now we got a good looking gun. What was I thinking before about that other one? Okay, SBX-15 is now on here. How does that change the game in this conversation? Well, okay, I would say this incorporates shoulder stock design features, but I don't think it's necessarily based on a known shoulder stock design. I mean, maybe you could say it is. Maybe it's like the Troy Battle Axe or something. I don't know. But if worse comes to worse, we just say it is still based on a known shoulder stock design, giving it those 2 points maybe. But let's go ahead and mark it down for 2, just to kind of give you some ideas there as to whether or not that still works, okay? Now, moving on down here. Device incorporates features to prevent use of shouldering the device. I mean, no, it doesn't. It doesn't have those spikes back here or anything that's gonna electrify me if I try to use it like a shoulder stock. But minimized rear surface lacking features to discourage shouldering. So minimized rear surface is how I'm going to actually identify this, because it has a really wide open cavity. It's not specifically designed to have additional surface or anything like the PCB brace did. So I'm going to say this has a minimized rear surface due to these thinner wings here on the back in order to be more compliant, right? And no, you don't have to comply. I'm not trying to tell you guys that. I'm just trying to show you this ridiculousness. So what does that mean? It means minimize rear surface lacking feature discourage shouldering gives me 1 point. I'm going to mark that off right here, okay? Now, I'm going to keep going. Non-adjustable fixed design, that's what this is. It's not adjustable. It's very on there, very good. I believe it's friction. It's not actually even technically attached, but it is definitely not adjustable. So we're good there. 0 points, good to go, okay? Now, keep coming back down here. And cuff type design that fully wraps around the arm. That's the big one here, because that's what this thing does. I mean, look at it. I'm not going to demonstrate it. You can tell that this thing is meant to wrap around your arm all the way, especially with this big honking strap right here. So I get 0 points in that category. And now my total score, according to what we all can agree on here, at least in my opinion, is going to be a 3. Okay? So now we have a 3. Once I added the SBX15 stock on here, or not stock, brace. Sorry, hey, I Freudian slip, not necessarily what I meant. This is a brace, not a stock, and I have a score of 3, okay? All right, now let's move on to the next part here. This is where it gets really interesting and annoying at the same time. Okay, length of pull. We got to score that one. You all know how we did it last time. Let's check the safety again. Look, I know you guys don't care, but YouTube cares, so I'm sorry. That's just what we're doing right now. Okay, length of pull from the middle of the trigger to the middle of the brace. And to the middle of this brace from the middle of the trigger, we're looking at about 12 3/4 of an inch, okay? Yep, about 12 3/4, maybe 12 5/8. Either way, that puts us at a 3. 12.5, but under 13.5, okay? So that means all of our extra points are gonna have to be 0, because if you hit 4, you're at a rifle. So this is a 3 now. And like I said, I'm just doing this with you guys to kind of show you how stupid it is, but also to give you ideas about how to approach this whole situation. Now, standard AR type buffer tube and all this stuff, right? Here's the thing. This is a standard AR pistol buffer tube. It doesn't have any kind of adjustment notches in it at all. It doesn't have the CAC type notches or anything. It's just a smooth tube that has a very tight friction brace attached to it. So what that does for me here, and it is 6 to 6.5 inches, there's a little bulge right here where the end of the buffer tube actually hits. And you can see when I measure from there, we're right at 6.5 inches. Okay, so we're good there. Okay, and that gives me a 0. All right, next, stabilizing brace modifications. Okay, cuff type or fin type design with strap too short to function and all these things. None of these things actually apply because this thing is legitimately like a real front forearm brace that's got all the things you would need from a brace to use it the way a brace is meant to be used. So here we go. None of this section applies, so we are good there. All right. Now coming down here is where things come into effect that I don't like. Presence of a hand stop. Like I said, we can't afford any more points at this point at all. So it's time to take the hand stop off. And this makes me sad because I like hand stops quite a bit, but it's what has to happen in order to, you know, be okay on this worksheet, which, do you really care about this? I don't know, but I'm just demonstrating why this is so dumb and why a lot of people are probably not going to actually do all of what I'm showing you right now. And when I say that, I think everyone knows what I'm alluding to, but this is hard to do on camera at a weird angle because of this stupid tripod that's in my way. Now, I don't want you guys to think that this is me trying to preach compliance. That's not the goal here. Please don't assume that. Okay, hand stop is off. Like I said, regular guy doing regular guy stuff here. We're doing it together. Thanks for bearing with me and being patient. Now, hand stop's off. Okay, moving down from there. No secondary grip, no flip up sights. Good to go there. And not no sights, right? The absence of sights is also a problem, which, I mean, makes sense except for what's wrong with backup sights. I don't know why those wouldn't qualify as just sights, but okay, sure. And then we're gonna move on to presence of a reflex sight with an flip to side magnifier with limited eye relief, which 3XC from Aimpoint definitely has all those things, and that would give me another score of 2 points. So we can't afford that, can we? So I've got to take this magnifier off now. Luckily, it's on a ScalarWorks mount that is nice and easy to remove. So go ahead and just twist that right off, okay? All right, here we go. Now we don't have to worry about that. Okay, no, there's no scope on here or anything like that. There's no bipod. Now the big one. Weapon configured, weighing more than 120 ounces. 7.5 pounds is not a lot to work with, especially if you want to have an optic and a light and sling and everything you want, right? And this brace is a beefy brace. This thing weighs a pound. There's a reason why I switched to the PCB brace, because it weighs nothing compared to this. This thing's huge. It weighs a lot, so it added a lot of weight to this whole overall setup, which I'm not very happy about. But let's go ahead and do this together so you can kind of see what I had to do in order to make this all work. Okay, empty magazine has to be weighed with this firearm. Empty magazine, nice and empty, right? But it's a 10 rounder. It doesn't say it has to be a 20 or a 30 or anything. It just says empty magazine. So, I mean, I don't know. how that's supposed to work per se. Maybe it's based on what you're using. You tell me, but hey, empty magazine, so the 10 rounder. Okay, here we go. Scale, come forth. All right, tear out for me, there we go. Fold this over, or I mean brace, sorry, brace. You know what I mean. Bear with me, everybody. All right, now, I'm gonna get that weight all on there, not touching anything, not getting any additional help. 7 pounds, 10.4 ounces. I am outside of the overall weight now, okay? So here's what we could do. And this is unfortunate, but it's true. I already have a ScalarWorks mount for my Aimpoint Comp M5. You can't get a much lighter optic setup than that, but if you wanted to, you could get like an RMR and put it on a lightweight mount, and that would be lighter, so I could probably save, you know, maybe up to 4 ounces by doing that, but that's questionable because the Aimpoint Comp M5 is already very light, and the ScalarWorks mount's one of the lightest ones you can possibly get. So, what else are we gonna look at? Well, I can show you that the sling is actually enough to fix the problem. It's got QD mounts, which are, or QD swivels, which are relatively heavy, I guess, in some ways. And this is a T-Rex arm sling. This is actually a very lightweight sling to begin with. This isn't like a heavy duty, you know, extra nylon-y Magpul sling or anything like that. This is a pretty lightweight sling anyway. But I remove the sling. And now we're at 7 pounds, 6 ounces. So now I'm not over the 120 ounces. So at this point, we only got the 3 points here, which I'll put over off to the side. 3 points for the length of pull because of this big hunkin' brace, not a stock, a brace, but that's it, okay? So I could have removed the sling. I could have removed the Surefire. The Surefire weighs about 4 ounces. That would have brought us back down under 7.8, no problem. But this is tough because what's more important? Optic, you have to have, or else you'll get a point for having no sights. And at the end of the day, you know, you got to be able to aim at what you're shooting at. And a white light's a good thing to have because honestly, I mean, what if it's nighttime? What if you need to positively identify a target? So the sling is very important too. These are like the 3 basics you need on any type of firearm like this: an optic, a light, and a sling. And I had to remove one of them in order to meet the weight requirement. Now, I could shave weight in other ways. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, change this to like an RMR on a mount type setup. I could get a carbon fiber forend for this MCX, and Lancer makes one, so that would save some weight and probably get me down under that 7.8. I could probably get rid of the pressure pad and stuff, but I don't think that'll actually get me down far enough to meet those requirements. So there's a couple of small things I could do, but at the end of the day, in the current configuration I have it in, this is it. I mean, I have to take the sling off or remove the light. I mean, that's about my only options. And yeah, the RMR instead of the Comp M5 might actually get me under that threshold, but that's a huge investment to do just to try to appease this whole compliance situation. But at least according to this sheet, and according to my approach of it, and according to my understanding of it, this is now a braced handgun. This is now suitable for use of a brace. Classification is braced handgun, not a rifle, okay? That's all I can understand when it comes to this. So let's wrap this up and just kind of have some parting thoughts because like I said, this is all dumb and this is coming very fast. So at the end of the day, how ridiculous was that whole process? It doesn't make any sense. Everybody has these, everybody bought them legally, and everybody's using them in a responsible way for the most part. And there's nothing we can do about what criminals decide to do or not do when it comes to breaking the law. And if someone's gonna break the law and use a firearm for a crime, what's stopping them from sawing the barrel down or chopping everything down to a tiny size of some kind, right? They're not gonna follow a worksheet. They're not gonna go through this process of trying to score their firearm before they go out the door to rob a liquor store or something like that. So understand that this is just for you and me to have more problems, and there's really no reason for it at all. So I think a lot of people are probably gonna just do whatever they feel is best rather than deal with all this crap. Because as you saw, it was very difficult to achieve what it is they're trying to say is reasonable, and without spending a lot of money or investment or everything else, you're going to end up with something subpar that doesn't necessarily do the job that you want it to be able to do. So, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not here to give you legal advice. I'm not sure if the way I did this worksheet was 100% accurate because I just did the best I could with my understanding. If I'm wrong about things, leave it in the comments so we can all learn a little bit more from it. And at the same time, understand that I'm not legally telling you what you should or should not do when these rules come to fruition. All I'm letting you know is that I'll do what I feel is best for me at this point in time, just because things don't seem to be stacked in our favor as regular people any longer now, do they? So do what you got to do, but at the end of the day, this is how the process works supposedly, and I'm not a big fan, and I'm sure you're not either. So if you have anything else for me at all, comment below, and that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.